All right, you guys are welcome to start whenever you'd like.
All right, we shall begin with a prayer. O Heavenly King, O Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art in all places and fillest all things, treasury of good things and giver of life, come and dwell in us and cleanse us from every stain and save our souls, O gracious Lord. Good morning to everyone, and is it still morning? I think it's noontime on the East Coast. And I'm Father John Finley, along with Michael Farrow. And for those of you who may not know, all the old timers know Michael, but some of the new timers may not know Michael. And Michael was for many years the vice chairman of the Department of Sacred Music, along with Ray George, and then with those who followed Ray before, and God rest his soul, Ray George, and those who followed him until Michael retired recently. And I believe, Michael, you're retired in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Is that correct?
That's where I am.
Yeah. So Michael is, and this is no exaggeration, Michael is a walking encyclopedia of Orthodox music, and in particular, our Antiochian music from the Antiochian Archdiocese of North America. He has prepared the bulk of this presentation, and he's Johnny Carson and I'm Ed McMahon, so I'll just be popping in every once in a while. But we're going to turn it over to Michael here to take the lead on the first portion of this presentation. So Michael, welcome and take it away.
Thank you, Father Finley. Well, hello, everybody. I'm really glad to be back at the SMI, virtual though it may be, and I want to welcome you all. The first slide you see on your screen has a little sketch of the major cathedrals in the various Orthodox patriarchates, with Saint Sophia in the foreground, and behind it on the right, Saint Simeon the Stylite in Syria for the Antiochians. And behind that, the Romanian Cathedral and St. Basil's in Moscow, and the Serbian Cathedral in Belgrade. So that's to say that Orthodox paraliturgical music is throughout all the patriarchates. And we're going to focus today on mainly the Antiochian tradition, but also some of the other patriarchal paraliturgical music. So we can go to the next slide. Many of Orthodox choir members don't realize that the Antiochians do have a paraliturgical Orthodox musical heritage. There's a scene here on your screen now, taken around 1950 in Lebanon. It was Great Friday, and they were singing "Rejoice, O Bethany," a paraliturgical song that actually isn't that old. It was composed in the 1850s by the Archbishop of Homs, H-O-M-S, Syria. And that's to show that there is a tradition of paraliturgical music in the Antiochian Church that goes back. Okay, next, there's the music for it. Our Bishop Basil essay in Wichita, Kansas, wrote down the notation in Western musical notation, and that's sung on Lazarus Saturday and Good Friday. And in villages in Lebanon and Syria, they march through the streets, sometimes with a little band on Good Friday, with a bass drum pounding out the music of Mozart's Requiem, and they're singing this song along the processional route. Okay, let's go to the next one. Oh, there's an icon you'll see there for Rejoice, O Bethany. Okay, Chris, we'll go on to the next slide. Here are some scenes of paraliturgical music singing, mainly Christmas carols from Bulgaria, Romania, and the Ukraine. Many of us are familiar with the Carpathian melodies, but these areas of Europe also have their own Christmas carols, paraliturgical. The one on the left is interesting. Looks like there's rings of bread hung on the staff there. Not sure what that signifies. Maybe one of our Bulgarian Orthodox friends can fill us in on that tradition. There are the Romanians in the center and the happy Ukrainians on the right singing. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. The Carpathians in Europe and in this country have carried on their tradition of Christmas carols. I say Christmas carols, but it's actually paraliturgical music throughout the Nativity season. And in Syria and in Lebanon, the Christmas season starts with St. Barbara and 2 days later with St. Nicholas. Here's the hymn that the Carpathians have in their tradition to sing to St. Nicholas. And I think we might have some music to that.
We're trying.
Okay.
Let's wait a second and see if Chris can deal with that.
Can you start that music, Chris? Oops.
Loves Nicholas the saintly, oh, who loves Nicholas the saintly, him will Nicholas receive and give help in time of need. Holy Father Nicholas, him will Nicholas receive and give help in time of need. Holy Father Nicholas, he who dwells in God's holy mansion.
Okay.
Were you able to hear that?
Yes.
Yeah, we heard it. So just so everyone knows, in this slide presentation, we're just kind of throwing up the music, but we don't have the entire piece. But if you go to your VSMI website where you logged in to join the webinar, you'll see a link to a download and the complete music of all the samples that we're going to show today. The complete music is in that download. And there's actually a couple of other pieces of music in there that we're not going to play. So be sure and go to the VSMI website for this session and download all the sheet music. Okay, Michael.
Thank you. You noticed in this piece of music that there was a refrain, and the refrain was repeated twice. That's very typical in Carpathian carols, and we'll talk about it a little later on. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is another Carpathian carol, Heaven and Earth. Very popular, and it's sung in many of our parishes in the Antiochian jurisdiction. It's a piece that was set to English, translated and set to English by Professor Michael Hilko, originally from Perth Amboy, New Jersey. And he translated and set to music and composed music for the Antiochian Archdiocese starting in the 1950s. In fact, he put together the first English Divine Liturgy for us and had it printed back in the 1950s. He's printed over 100 pieces, or I mean, he's composed over 100 pieces or transliterated them into English. And we have computerized all but one of the 106 pieces. Some of them are entire services, and I'm going to get the last one from Juliana Carey in Perth Amboy here next week, she tells me. So that'll be the Good Friday service. So all of those eventually we hope to have on our website. But the Christmas carols, 4 of them by Michael Hilkel, are indeed on our website. Okay, do we have a choir singing this one? Notice how cheerful and jolly they are. And I'm pleased to say that our newer composers of the 21st century who have been composing carols have picked up this joyfulness in their music too. And these are very, very popular and becoming more popular throughout our archdiocese.
Michael,
Okay.
we have a question. We have a question, who composed that hymn? And I don't know if these are just folk carols or if we actually have
A composer.
authors of these
You know,
hymns.
as far as I know, these are folk carols. I don't know who originally composed them. Professor Hilco put them into English and harmonized them. Other people have also harmonized them. But I've never seen an original composer, nor do I know how old they are. I haven't done in-depth research on this, but
We have the name of an author, Michael. The name
Okay.
of the author is Traditional.
oh, Mr.
Yeah, you know the ubiquitous Traditional,
Yes,
written tons and tons of music.
correct.
Okay, keep going.
Keep going, Chris. Thank you.
Are we
This
going
is
to
the
play?
next slide.
We're going to play There's Joy in Bethlehem. Let's listen to that.
There is joy in Bethlehem, Christ the Lord to us is come. Angels singing, shepherds kneeling, wise men following the star. For Christ is born. Angels singing, shepherds kneeling, wise men following the star.
Okay, there we have the refrain again being repeated twice. One of our participants sent me a chat to say that correctly that these carols, I've been calling them Carpatho-Russian because that's how they're sort of known in this country, but indeed they're known throughout the Slavic world. So many of the countries of Eastern Europe and jurisdictions sing these carols. Okay, let's go to the next one. This slide is to show you some paraliturgical scenes in other patriarchates. The one on the left is in Greece. You can see they're using instruments, flutes and drums, and that's not uncommon in Greece. It's not uncommon in Lebanon either, I know of. And on the right is an interesting one. That's the Indian Orthodox Church, the Malankara Church. And those are immigrants in Abu Dhabi, workers there, singing their Christmas paraliturgical hymns. Okay, let's go on. This is a Greek song for St. Basil's Day. St. Basil's Day, as you know, is January 1st, and it falls within the Nativity season in Greece. And gifts actually are exchanged in Greece on St. Basil's Day rather than Christmas Day. And part of that, it has to do with the change of calendars. They kept the 13 days behind, which sort of fell around St. Basil's Day. So they exchanged gifts from the old calendar to the new calendar, which is St. Basil's Day. And they make little cakes, eat, and they have a little traditions that go with it. And there's a coin in the cake, and whoever gets the coin will have good luck that year. This is the song that they sing. It's based on the Greek Aeolian mode. So it is based on an ancient mode. Do we have the music? No, we don't have the music for that one.
We don't have the music for this, but the sheet music is in the download.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, so, and Michael, we have a question. When you said that the music of Hilco could be found on our website, did you mean the Antiochian.org website or
Yes.
on another website?
No, on the Antiochian.org
Okay.
website. Yes. It's, I think, under Nativity carols, not Christmas carols. I think it's under the N in the alphabet, Nativity. Okay, this is a scene in Alaska, the Aleuts, and they picked up their customs, which they received from the Russian Orthodox Church early on. And they also go around singing carols at Christmas time. Father Finley pointed out that the priest there seems to have a red robe and a red hat. I'm not sure the origin of that custom, but I do know that in the Russian church, they do wear colors other than black. So perhaps at some point they wear red for Christmas, which is a customary color in Orthodox churches also at Christmas. Okay, we don't have music for that. Now we're into the Antiochian tradition, and I wanted to show this slide because here are our 5 feast days where we not only have music, but in many cases in the Antiochian tradition, there's a little skit that goes with it. The children go from house to house and perform a skit for St. Catherine. She will get, the little girls will get dressed up in little dresses, and the boys will, one boy will play the role of the father and another of the king. And of course she was martyred. And so they mimic the martyrdom of St. Catherine. I don't have the music for that, they do sing little hymns with it as they go around. The next is the Transfiguration, which falls in August. And there, the tradition is that the boys and girls go into the forest and gardens, and they bring back wood and hay, and they light a fire, and they form the hay and the wood in the form of a cross, and they light it into a fire, and then they sing Kyrie eleison, and this is the feast day of the Lord our God. And the third icon in the center is the Exaltation of the Cross, and there they mix. The children go out into the field and they mix ashes and they place it in the form of a cross and light it with gasoline and burn it. And they sing again. Our religion is a Christian, and we love the religion of Christ. And they sing Kyrie eleison.
Should
And
it, Michael, should we put a disclaimer here?
I'm not advocating.
Don't do this without adult supervision.
I'm not advocating any of these, but I do say, and I'll point out a little later on the Feast of St. Barbara that I'll be talking about. The point of all of these little skits and singing in Syria and Lebanon, wherever, is to bring the story of that particular feast day to the children and to the congregant. We can do that particularly in this country, and since we live in big cities and even small cities. So I'm a strong advocate of adapting the tradition and doing it in the parish church. So you adapt it the best way you can, and obviously lighting gasoline is not to be recommended at all.
Michael, we have a question.
Okay.
It's not how do you light the gasoline fire? That's not the question. The question is, it sure would be wonderful. Hang on just a second. Got a couple of more chats and I lost it. Sure would be wonderful to be able to get the skits and music for us to use at St. Peter Classical School, which is our parish school. Would it be available? Do you have any of these skits?
I have written in Arabic, I have some skits that I tried to translate with my limited ability. And I started this project as a project 10 years ago to take the feast days and combine them with the skits, the music, and the food that was served on those days. And I never got too far with it because I can't find the music in some cases. Many of these traditions are already lost in Lebanon. And when I visited there 15 years ago, there were people in the village that just couldn't, the younger ones just didn't remember at all the verses or even the skits. I had to seek out the elderly people, and I got some of them to write down what they remembered as being the skits. So it'll
Michael, we're getting several chats. Yeah, that would be good for the church school. Yeah, that would be wonderful. I mean, we're getting a lot of response on this. So would you make yourself available? I mean, I don't know if you want to provide your email address so that they could contact you, or if there's some other way we could do that.
I'd be happy to give them the email address. I don't have a problem with that. And I maybe at some time we can contact Balamand University in Lebanon and see if they have some research on this, or if they have an archive.
Yeah. Okay, we've got, I believe, the third comment from Jesse Cox. So I think I should acknowledge, Jesse, we're seeing your messages. Please don't light a fire. Please don't start a fire in the forest. Please don't start a fire in the woods. Please don't. All right. So we're being exhorted not to do the fire tradition.
Yes, and there are a couple other traditions that I won't go into here that they do over there that we can perhaps skip. But anyway, on the right is St. Lazarus, where the children wear a long white robe, and or rather, the child dressed as Lazarus wears a white robe and holds a cross that has white ribbons. Martha wears a long white dress. Mary wears the same style dress. They both wear veils. They go to the house, and Lazarus lays down, and Mary kneels on one side and Martha on the other. And then the woman of the house gives the children money or wheat or bread and eggs and other foods and sweet dried fruit. There, I don't know what the song is they sang, unless it's O Bethany. Now, the last one I want to talk about is St. Barbara there. And if we go to the next slide, St. Barbara, as you know, St. Barbara adopted Christianity, and her father locked her up in a tower. And he told the emperor, he himself wanted to behead her, which he ultimately did. This starts the Christmas season, as I said earlier, in Syria and Lebanon, and they still chant verse. And I have one verse. There are two melodies that I've determined with this song. One I will just sing to you in my halting Arabic. It's the one on the left, which begins, "Here Comes St. Barbara." And it's a chant that reminds me of the early Antiochian chant. This is the chant of the Patriarchate of Antioch before it adopted the 8 tones of Byzantine Constantinople. Each patriarchate had their own chant. And in the case of Antioch, the chant only varied 3 or 4 notes within a scale. So it was sort of what we would today call sort of a monotone chant. It is still to be heard today in the Maronite Catholic Church in Lebanon and in the Jacobite Church in Lebanon. But okay, I'm going to sing a little bit here on the left of Here Comes St. Barbara. Haji Barbara il Amahbaduwara Zaitkum Baitkum Allah Katar Haikum. You can see that it's a chant, and in Arabic it rhymes. And I might mention that in Arabic poetry, the thought from one line to another doesn't always carry. Like, "Here comes St. Barbara," then the next sentence is, "The weed is in the garden, and in this house is the oil, and may God bless you and keep you." And that all has to do with St. Barbara. Because she was beheaded, they serve the wheat when the children come to the front door of the house. And the wheat is the wheat that you serve during a memorial service, except it's made like an oatmeal. So it's a little soupy, but it has all the candy on it. And
We have a picture of that. Is that in the next
that'll
slide?
be on the next slide, I think. And on your right is another song of St. Barbara. When she rebuked her father, he threatened her with a sword, and she prayed to God, and God changed the sword into a crochet needle. And so they bring that up in the song. Chris, can you play that song for them? This is by a monk, an Arabic monk that I had sing me the song. I haven't written down the
قديسة بربرة عند الرب مختارة أبوك هالكافر عباد الحجارة سلقنا لك سليقة ليش ما جيتي أكلتي شعلنا لك الشمعة ليش ما جيتي طافطي قديسة بربرة عند الرب مختارة أبوك هالكافر عباد الحجارة.
Okay, you can see that that's similar to the ancient Antiochian chant also. Here,
Michael, we had an interesting question because you were referring to the old Arabic tradition of chant, and the question was asked about when did Antioch adopt the 8 tones, the Byzantine.
it was
I'm
fairly
assuming the question is when did we adopt the Byzantine 8 tones?
It was, well, all the patriarchs that were under the influence of Constantinople. That would be the Antiochian and Alexandrian patriarchates. And I want to say that was maybe in the 6th or 7th century. It was early on that the patriarchates had to give up their original liturgies. I think I've been told one of the few remnants of the old Antiochian liturgy that we still carry on today is the great entrance. When I grew up, in this country, the great entrance, you processed in the church the entire ring of the church. You went up the one on the one side, and rather than coming down the center aisle, you went the whole way around the church, the great entrance. And then for the little entrance, you came out and went up one side, and for the little entrance, down the middle. So it was littler. It was only down the center aisle halfway. They were great for processions in the Church of Antioch. And so that longer procession remained with us until the late 20th century, when people wanted to shorten the church service, so they shortened the processions, the entrances. Okay, this is St. Barbara. There's the bowl of wheat on your right, decorated with nuts and sweets. And there the kids, because the tradition said that she was, before she was beheaded, she was thrown into a fiery furnace. And each time she came out of the furnace, she had a different dress on. So when they go around to the houses, the children dress up, the women, the little girls dress up in different dresses, and the boys dress up as if they were the Roman soldiers out to behead her, and they wear masks to hide their faces so you don't know who they are. And the icon of St. Barbara at the Antiochian village in the chapel, it's the last icon as you look toward the iconostas. It's the last icon on the right, and down in the corner of that icon is a little miniature image of a housewife from the Middle East standing in front of her little stone house, and the children singing in different dresses, and the boys with their mask. And the iconographer has the little black mask painted on him. I happened to tell him that St. Barbara's Day in Lebanon has resorted into a Halloween day for them in Lebanon. So they today dress up in different costumes and different masks. In any event, the iconographer painted little masks on the boys. They're like little Lone Ranger black masks on them. But that's down in the lower right hand of the corner of the icon. So the next time you go to the Institute at the village, do take a look at St. Barbara's icon. But the hostess then gives them the wheat, which is called in Arabic the barbara, or the Barbara. That's the name of the dish. Okay, and then an older woman will anoint their eyes with a salve. I don't know the significance of that. That's one of those things I have to find out with a little more research. Okay, let's go to the next thing. This is a paraliturgical hymn that I wrote, that I based on a melody from Lebanon. It has 8 verses. There's 4 shown on the screen. The tenor and bass part might be a little difficult for the average choir, but I do know that many of our churches use the melody line, and it has the refrain in it, which I wrote in 4 languages. And because it's so long, if you have the choir singing the melody line and the refrain, or someone chanting the melody line with the choir all coming in on the refrain, it makes a nice hymn to sing while people are going down to receive communion. Because it does have 8 verses, it's a long hymn, and it sort of covers most of the time that it takes, except in very large churches, to go down and receive your communion. So there on your right are the 4 languages of Christ is Born, which is built into the music there. Okay.
So what Mike is saying, correct me, Michael, if you're wrong, this is not actually the communion hymn. I mean,
the first verse is.
The first verse is, but then it's this stuff that's been added. So
I added, yes, I added all the other verses based on biblical nativity texts.
And so what you're suggesting is that after the communion hymn itself has been sung in its proper place,
correct,
then we could continue with music using this during the communion time while people are receiving the communion.
Correct, yes. That's how it's been used. And I have at the top of the piece where you can find all the verses that I included in there.
Chris, do we have a recording of this?
We do not have a recording of this one.
Okay, all right. If you want to hear this, Vlad Morrison with Musica Rusica recorded a CD, and I believe the title is Christ is Born, Give Glory. Anyway, it's something, I don't think it's Christ is Born, Glorify Him. I think it's Christ is Born, Give Glory. But anyway, you can go on the Musica Rusica site and get the entire CD, which is a beautiful CD. And this is recorded on that CD.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go on from here. This leads me to 21st century composers, and this is an early 20th century, well, it's actually 20th century composer, yes, and was Father Jack Sparks. When the Evangelical Orthodox joined the Antiochian Archdiocese back in the 1980s, they received all their information on Orthodoxy from the literature by doing their research, but they had difficulty finding research on Orthodox music. So they took Nasser's 5-pounder and went through it, and Father Jack Sparks diligently metered the entire book. Now, as you know, the Greek originals were metered. The text was metered. And in the Antiochian church, the Greek was not translated until as late as 1899, when we had our first Arabic patriarch. Up until then, the patriarchs of Antioch were Greek. So they translated everything into Arabic, but they did not meter it. So Father Jack Sparks, taking the unmetered English of Nasser, metered the entire book. And when I asked him for the December Menaion, I looked through that and I realized that much of what he had in there, because it was metered, would be excellent text for Christmas carols. So I looked around for a composer who might set that to music, and Richard Tosing had joined our archdiocese, and I asked if he would take a stab at putting this to music. And he did a few of them. He sent them to me, and they were excellent, I thought. And so he continued composing, and I think he composed literally to the day before he passed away. I know he was still composing because I was in contact with him, and he, I think, ended up with something like 30 carols, 20 to 30 carols. And he incorporated the refrains as he heard them in the Carpathian carols, and he incorporated the phrase, Christ is born, glorify him. This particular piece, The Shepherds in the Fields Received, was one based on the Troparion from Matins. And by the way, I might add that all of this English that he used that's metered was passed by our Department of Liturgics back in the 1980s. And I was told that it is thoroughly, what do I want to say, authentic. There's nothing incorrect theologically about any of his translations. So they all are theologically correct, and you can feel comfortable singing them in a paraliturgical setting after church or wherever. So I think we had the music for this one, do we not?
Such a
I might mention that when I asked Father Jack to set these to music, I said, I want bright and sprightly carols. And for the most part, he wrote them very sprightly and bright. And as you see at the top of this, it says brisk and rhythmic. Actually, the choir that sung this did a fine job, but it wasn't as brisk as he originally had said it or wanted it to be sung, although it sounds very nice at the pace that was being sung. It sounded more like a hymn perhaps than a carol, but in either way, it's very effective. And I do encourage you to look on our website. I believe his carols are on our website, so you will find them there. Okay, and we can go on to the next slide. Here's another one of, oh, this is Father Finley's carol. Okay, Father.
Yeah, so let me tell another story about Father Jack, because it's still quite a vivid memory in my mind. And in a way, I kind of smile, and in a way, I kind of groan. And in a way, I realize how much I loved him, because creativity sometimes comes out of suffering. Great creativity often comes out of suffering. And we see in many icons that are so beautiful, yet when we take a little closer look, we see a kind of mixture of compassion and pain, you know, coming together. And pain and suffering can often produce beauty. Father Jack injured his back when he was 19 years old, baling hay. And because he was young, he kind of got past it, but when he got older, it came back to haunt him. And he had several surgeries, at least, I think he had 4 surgeries on his back. And none of them really worked. I mean, going in and trimming disc, going in and fusing disc, going in and putting in plates. He could not get past the pain. He couldn't get free of the pain. He finally, he bought a lounge chair, and it was a vibrator lounge chair. And this was one of the primary ways that he dealt with his pain when it was the most intense, was writing these metered hymns. And I would go into his house. He was set up in his living room, and he had a tray above it, and there's a Festal Manea, and there's the Lenten Triode, and there's Nasser's Divine Prayers and Services. And he would have a pad and a pencil, and he would be looking at these hymns and writing them out in rhyme and meter. And so I took, as Richard Tensing did, I took a particular interest in the things from the December Manean right around the time of Christmas. And this is the Antiochian of Christmas Day, the Nativity of the Lord, rhymed and metered. So, Mike, or Chris, do we have a recording on this? Well, you have to have a Picardy third on the end if it's going to be a Christmas carol, right?
That's right.
So, you know, I have, this is from Musica Rusica's Christmas CD that I just mentioned. And I've got that CD, but I didn't want to, you know, unlawfully, you know, rip it off the CD, and I didn't know how to play it. And so I found a 99-cent download on Amazon. And so I paid 99 cents so we could hear it, in this session. So anyway, get that CD, and there's some other beautiful things in there. You know that there's some other hymns on there by Kevin Lawrence that those of you who know Kevin, I thought he did a beautiful job with some of those Christmas hymns. So let's go on to the last one. We're running out of time here.
Yeah.
And I don't have a recording of this. And Valerie Yova, if you're on and you're listening, maybe we should get a good recording of this at some point. But this is the Troparion, the Paraliturgical for the pre-feast of Christmas. And again, this is a paraliturgical hymn. However, I know of at least one church that actually uses this for the Paraclesis of Advent. And I know that many of our churches use this Advent Paraclesis maybe midweek. And just as a point of clarification, I know this is a liturgical technicality, but it could be said of the Paraclesis service that it is a non-liturgical service. In other words, it's kind of like, you know, complines or something. I mean, we use the word liturgical service, but I mean, it's not like Vespers or Orthros or Divine Liturgy. It's not really a what we might call a formal divine liturgical services. So it's more reflective and meditative. So I'm not giving you permission to use this in the Advent Paraclesis, but just to tell you that it has been done. It has been done, and maybe it could be done, sung at the conclusion of the Advent Paraclesis service.
Father John, there was a person on the chat that wanted you to repeat the CD from Musica Rusica.
I believe the title is Christ is Born, Give Glory. Christ is Born, Give Glory. I think that's the title on it.
Father John, just one quick mention. The recordings that Vlad Morrison's group does and that's posted on Musica Rusica is technically under the name of the group is Archangel Voices. So
That's
it's probably Archangel Voices with that title, and you can find it on Musica Rusica, but it's all Vlad Morrison.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I'll sing a little bit of this. Be prepared, O Bethlehem. Eden opens now to all. O Ephrathah, ready make, for within the stable cave, from the Virgin Mary pure, the tree of life hath blossomed forth. And the last line, Christ the Lord is born to raise the image that had fallen long before. So I hope this is all of these hymns that we threw up on the screen. They're all in the download. So if you haven't downloaded the music, go to the VSMI website for this session where you logged into this session, and you'll see a link for the download for all of this music. And don't worry about the copyright there at the bottom. It's yours.
I wanted to quickly mention my email address if you want to call me, email me, is my last name, FARROW 002@gmail.com.
Okay, and finally, do we have time? Well, we're about out of time. We posted.
Go ahead, Father. It's okay.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
All right. You want to play it? I think everybody knows it, but just another paraliturgical hymn. So let's play it. Okay, I think that's good. So shall we wrap up with
Father John, I was just going to say just a little note for those people who are watching the time and watching the schedule. The 1 o'clock lunch and learn, or brunch and learn if you're over on the west side of the country, is scheduled to start right at 1. That's a recorded session, so I don't want to cut this session because I think people have some questions that we'd like to answer. So instead of jumping to that, I'm going to put that recorded session up so that people can just watch it on demand, and we'll let you guys continue for just the next few minutes to get through the questions, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of people ask what was that particular recording of "O Pure Virgin," and I'm not sure. I was thumbing around, on internet and YouTube and stuff. I may have found that on a YouTube video. I can't recall which recording that is.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go through the Q&A that we have here. There was a question from Katie that says, can you define paraliturgical? Is seasonal music a special category?
Mike, you want to take that?
Well, paraliturgical means it's a piece that is not incorporated or part of a liturgical service. So in the Orthodox Church, your services like Matins and Vespers and Divine Liturgy have set music and set pieces. These do not, you can't just sing this in the middle of a Divine Liturgy or something like that. So para means against the liturgy. So it's sung after the liturgy or not during the service. A Christmas carol would be something like that. That's my understanding of paraliturgical.
It's like a paramedic is not a medic,
It's not quite.
but he's right there next to the medic. He's doing a lot of the work of a medic. But if something's labeled paraliturgical, then we want to be somewhat cautious about incorporating that into the divine service, and we wouldn't want to do that without the blessing of our local pastor. I know occasionally, like I saw some of the comments, "Oh, pure Virgin," maybe we sing that during the communion time if we need to, stretch out. There's a lot of communicants and we need to add some music to that communion time. If it's appropriate, that we might add it to that. Just like, I think someone mentioned, "A new commandment I give to you." Well, is that a communion hymn? Well, I don't think it's prescribed for any Sunday or any service, but people sing it all the time. They don't sing it instead of the communion hymn. They sing the prescribed communion hymn first. But then if there are a lot of communions and we want to stretch out that time of communion with some more music, then maybe with the blessing of the pastor, we could sing something like "A New Commandment."
I think that's important. If you're going to sing any of this paraliturgical music during the liturgy, even for going up for communion, check with your pastor first. Because I do know there are some that are very strict about.
But more often than not, these hymns are sung like if we're going to have a Christmas pageant or a Christmas program or a nativity play, or maybe before a service starts, or after even more appropriately after the service is over. Have the Christmas liturgy, and then afterwards, and maybe people want to stay and they want to sing these hymns or hear these hymns after the liturgy is concluded. So we can find appropriate places and times. How about during coffee hour, during Advent? Say we're going to have a little concert, and sing some of these carols. So we can find ways to incorporate these things into the life of the church, if not necessarily into the divine service itself.
All right, awesome. I had a couple questions about metered text, and you did kind of explain it, but can you just give us a little bit more explanation as to what we mean by metered text versus unmetered text, and how it sets into the music separately, since it's metered?
Well, shall I try that? The traditional meters are like a long meter, da 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 da. So there's different meters. That's long meter. Then maybe there's 6/8 meter. There's 7/8 meter, and those are talking about how many syllables in a line. So long meter is 8/8. So, and then sometimes there's 8/7, 8/7, 8/7. And so different forms of poetry. I'm no poet, I'm no expert poet, but I mean, there's different forms of poetry, like, sonnets and things like this, and they follow a particular kind of structure. And many of the Orthodox liturgical hymns in the Greek language have a kind of meter. I don't know if they're one of those meters, but they are metrical and sound poetic to the Greek ear. And when we translate them into English, we translate them into prose. Why? I don't know. Maybe to preserve theological accuracy. But as Mike said, with Father Jack's hymns, these hymns were, many of them were reviewed by the Department of Liturgical Translation. They said theologically, these have captured captured the meaning and the essence and the theology of this particular hymn. And so what he was doing was he was putting those into familiar meters. It's interesting to note that St. Ambrose of Milan, who is our saint that we celebrate on December 7th, wrote hundreds of hymns in long meter, rhymed and metered, hundreds of hymns in Latin, rhymed and metered. And some of you who may be familiar with the name J.M. Neale, John Mason Neale, he was part of the 19th century Oxford movement in England, and he translated many of St. Ambrose and other hymns into English and translated them rhymed and metered as they were in the original Latin, and could be found in hymnals like Hymns Ancient and Modern, or some of the old Anglican hymn books in English.
Cool. Thanks, Father John. I think that's a great explanation. When we think about metered in Western non-Orthodox music, a lot of times we think about the hymnals that they have, so that you have the entire verse along with that fits into that music. A lot of times in Orthodox music, we think about metered texts being for our prosomia melodies, so that the words match up with the prosomia so that we can sing them. And a lot of the music that you've presented today, it really follows that, and it allows us to sing in verses rather than try to make a new melody for every verse that you give. A couple other questions. We have a question. When Father Jack, this is probably for you, Father John, because you know him better. When he metered his translations, did you say that he metered it from the Nasser 5-pounder, or did he meter it by retranslating the ancient Greek?
No, he was using the English translations. He was using all of these Christmas ones. He took out of the Festal Manean, by Mother Mary and Callisto Swear. So he was using that, and he was rhyming and metering from that English translation of the Festal Manean. So no, he was not translating from the Greek.
Okay. And the other question about that is Father Jack Sparks' metered work published and available somewhere?
It's not published. I would say probably the most exhaustive type compilation of what he did would be found at St. John Church in Eagle River, Alaska. I would imagine that, you could contact Father Mark Dunaway, who's the pastor there. I don't know that he's the one who has them, but somebody there has them. And I've got some. I've got most of the December stuff, but a lot of this is just in his handwriting. And I think I typed a few of them out, but I typed them out so long ago, I don't know if I could even find them on my computer, or if they're even on my computer anymore.
Okay.
It would be a great project for someone to undertake.
Great. Okay, last question I'm going to throw out to you. From Carrie, do you know of settings of the full Kentuckian of Christmas? My priest would like it sung paraliturgically, etc. Or example, at the Veneration of the Cross at the end of the service. Is that one of the hymns that you had composed, or that was on the presentation?
The whole Kentuckian. The whole Kentuckian. That would be a big piece. I'm not sure I even have the text to the complete Christmas Kentuckian, much less the music. I mean, I'm wondering if this question is like the full Kentuckian, because I mean, what we call a Kentuckian in the liturgical services is not really the whole thing.
Okay. All right. Well, those are the questions that we had. Both Father John and Michael, what a fantastic presentation. We really appreciate the work that you put in on this and your expertise, and we will just say thank you. And just as a note to the attendees, we have about 20 minutes before your breakout sessions start. Remember, if you link from the VSMI homepage, you should have a relatively easy time linking directly into those sessions. And that's all we have. Do either of you have any other comments before we wrap up?
Someone in the notes said that Richard Tenzing recorded the full Antiochian, as he recalls. So you might go onto Richard Tenzing's website and see if you can find it there. And we'll close with the blessing. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the communion of the Holy Spirit go with each of you. Amen. Christ is born.
Glorify him.